Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar today. I'm Francis Seeley from GlobalNet 21 and Infill Voices, and this is one of the many webinars we do where we talk about important issues and where people are trying to make a difference, either locally or nationally or even globally as well. And today we're going to look at a micro project which, when it's replicated, becomes more than micro. It becomes a big project. It can help people all over the world, and it's called the Little Free Pantry. And we've got three people to talk about it today, not one, three today. We've got Jessica McClard, who's from the USA, and they started it all over there, and she'll tell us about that. We've got Lara Mackie, who's from Southend, and she's got several going there. She'll tell us about that. And we've got Maria Lee, who's from Chelmsford, and she will tell us about that as well. So, thank you, all three of you, for joining us. I mean, it's great that you're here. And can we start, Maria, by asking you about the Little Pantry? You started it recently, and having done that, just tell us what you think the Little Pantry is.
Little Pantry is a very interesting project. When you call the project, it's really very big one. But this is very, very small you can start with, which is you only need a box in front of your house or in front of any buildings, which I got this information from Facebook. And then when I started looking for some project, which I don't want to make a very huge, big things. But at the time in one of the context, we really need to help some other people, but I don't want to make a very huge, big thing. But when I saw this Facebook about Little Free Pantry, I really ran to Jessica to email to her, what is it? Can I use it from America? That's how we started from the Little Free Pantry.
Okay, and Jessica, the question that she asked you is, what is it? Well, tell us, what is the Free Pantry? How did you get the idea?
The Little Free Pantry, kind of in its original conception, was a box on a post. Available to anyone, anytime, no questions asked, containing food and personal care, paper products. Again, available to anyone, anytime, supplied by neighbors. So the idea for the project kind of came about as a result of a few things that were influencing me around the time. I had watched as the Little Free Library movement had really picked up steam in my hometown of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I am a lover of reading, so I think perhaps I was paying particular attention to these little spaces as potentially providing some new reading material. There was one along a route that I frequently drove. Then there was another, and before long there were two or three within easy walking distance of my home, which at the time was in a very middle-class neighborhood. So Little Free Library does a very good job at accomplishing its mission of providing reading material in places where access is a problem and promoting literacy. But this was resonating in all sorts of contexts, not just low-income neighborhoods. These were going in everywhere. Around the same time, I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point about a viral phenomenon. And I kind of recognized that this concept was tipping right in front of my eyes. And so I think I really started to think about what was going on in that space, which seemed to have as much to do with our desire to reconnect with our neighbors as it did with literacy. And if it really was about this desire for reconnection and neighborliness, then anything might go inside of it. Okay. My home state, Arkansas, is perpetually one of the top two most food insecure states in the entire country. And even though I live in a place that is relatively affluent compared to the state as a whole, there is still just a lot of food insecurity. So I think once I started thinking about the concept in those terms, I knew what I was going to do with it.
Okay, well, it's quite interesting that you got the idea from the free library, because quite a few comments said, this idea is like the free library, I like it. And that's where you got it from. And Lara, where did you get it from, and where did you go, and how did you set it up?
Well, the Little Free Library is actually the segue into, it was the gateway for me to access the Little Free Pantry movement. I was actually waiting for one to be built, a Little Free Library to be built for me, so that I could host a Little Free Library. And I joined up with the Little Free Library sort of Facebook group. And all of a sudden, this video pops up, and it's right in the early stages of Jessica, and the kind of right at the outset of when she started the Little Free Pantry project. I had previously volunteered at a food bank a few streets away, and I know I know how much poverty there is in Southend. You know, I know what the needs are for the people here, and I'd actually had to stop volunteering there due to my health. And I just suddenly thought to myself, that's what I can do, because I felt there was something. I always knew that there was something that I was waiting for, something that I could do to make a contribution to my community. And having had the recent experience volunteering at the food bank, and the simplicity, putting a cupboard outside your house and other people filling it with food, it's just so simple.
But is it, I mean, what's the difference, Lara, between a food bank, you said you worked on it, and the pantry idea?
The difference is, with food banks, you need to get a voucher, and not everybody qualifies for a voucher. And the beauty of the Little Free Pantry movement is that it's completely judgment-free. With so much food insecurity around, and I'm going to jump a bit ahead and kind of bring it into context, they meet a need. You know, somebody might turn up in a BMW, for example, but they might have just had a £4,000 vet's bill, you know, and they can't, you know, they've run out of something. We are not the people to judge what their need is. Somebody might have mobility problems. There's a need. It's judgment free.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea, and Jessica, it's an idea which began in America, and we're talking now about it, you know, being replicated in the UK, but it's becoming a worldwide movement, isn't it?
That's right. I kind of will just do a quick rundown of the movement news. Just about every day I read about a new project launching today in the Netherlands. It's rooted fairly well in the Netherlands and in a few countries in Europe, but especially well in New Zealand and Australia, and increasingly in South Asia. I think early on during the pandemic, I read about something like 50 projects that went up within a couple of weeks in Bangkok. So I think that you know, this is something that can be done relatively quickly and respond to a need relatively quickly. And I think because of the pandemic, that's exactly what we're seeing in lots of places.
Okay, so it's happening all over the world, and that's interesting to know. But it's happening in Chelmsford. And Maria, can you tell us, I mean, you're involved with the church. This isn't a church project only, is it? It's something that anyone could do, but the churches wanted to be involved.
Mm-hmm. That's correct, because when I first started, we got a community cafe team who works very closely with a local food bank. But somehow food bank had to move their facilities from one of the place. So which means we got a team and we got still needs in the community, but we didn't know where to start. That's why we started to looking around this project, Little Free Pantry. as Jessica said, that's really easy to access, easy to start with as well. However, because of this, the team involved, we need new format about it. That's why I need some permission by Jessica. So that's why I emailed her. But she said, no, you don't need any permission by me, whatever. You don't need to pay about using logos whatsoever. But she gave me, say that, give what you can, take what you need. That's I need to only follow that one. However, when I look at one of the context, if you say give what you can, that context doesn't really make sense because they always really needed one. So we changed the phrase, start with take what you need and give what you can. So again, this project, you can manage it or you can design for whatever you need in your local areas as well.
Okay, so, maybe Jessica, you can tell us because you started it, you got it going. I mean, are they based anywhere? Is it a question of volunteers offering? Do you get in touch with people? Do they come to you? And how do people know they're there? How do they access it? How do you get the word out?
So people do come to me, I think probably because of SEO, really more than anything. I have a fairly large social media following for the Little Free Pantry. So I think when people hear about the concept and they just Google it, a lot of times I'm the first place that they kind of land. But that's absolutely not required. There is no organizational structure around Little Free Pantry, which increasingly I refer to as the mini pantry movement because it goes by a lot of different names. There are blessing boxes and free tiny pantries and karma closets. I mean, this goes by many, many different names. In turning the idea loose into communities, it really allows for, I guess, adapting the concept to local context, branding, ownership, all of those kinds of things. And then what happens is once a mini pantry moves into a new market, the person who stewards that project really becomes kind of the resource for others who want to follow suit in that area. So in doing that allows the information to get out a lot faster. And really, those who live in a place are in the best position to talk about what the project is like in that place, because conditions on the ground are different. And as Lara can probably attest, and increasingly Maria, projects that are located a mile apart are different. So those who are doing the work are really the best folks to talk with about the work. I am always happy to talk with anyone who wants to do this or try to connect people who may be in a similar context, but that's absolutely not necessary. The concept is just free for anyone to adapt in whatever way best kind of fulfills their vision and meets their community's need.
Okay, well, maybe I can ask you this, Lara. We've had a lot of comments saying this is a fantastic idea, but they want to know, what sort of things get put in the little pantry. Is it just food? Is it anything else? Can it be rubbish? How do you monitor it? And people have said, we can't do it in our area. People would just go in and steal things. I mean, how do you respond to that sort of pessimistic view of what the pantry might be?
I think going to the first point of what do people put in, I would say that more or less, I mean, initially Jessica's guidance to me was non-perishables. That was the original idea, but we've actually, Southend is actually what's known as a transition town, and there's a lot of permaculture people here, and people grow a lot of their own food. So quite often I find that we might have a surplus, somebody might have a surplus of something and they'll come and leave it here as well. I myself actually have put my surplus of apples from my tree out. And so, more or less, I generally tend to make sure that it's non-perishable goods. And I do have a look through if people have put stuff up that doesn't necessarily look like it's just come from the shop. And I will have a look at the dates because people do. But at the end of the day, it's somebody's doing something kind. And it's up to us as the hosts of the pantries to monitor that as best we can. In terms of your point about it being, what was it you said, that it was the more pessimistic view, I'm actually quite philosophical about it, in so much as that it's not for the host, it's not for us to determine what that person's need is. It's supposed to be judgment free. Their need may be a psychological, an emotional need. They might have such severe food insecurity that they don't know if they're going to be able to get something next week, so they take everything now. It's not for us to judge. And I found that a really interesting journey to go on when considering these factors. I know Jessica and I've had a conversation about the first time I encountered something like this, and we talked about various different options, and I've got to say, Jessica, I will always say thank you so much for your encouragement and the way that you've tried to help me kind of look at things and look at alternatives. But more than anything, I think the point of, you know, somebody might say, well, should we lock it at night, or should we do this, or should we do that, should we close it up? And it kind of defeats the object, because there's so much stigma around accessing things that are for free. And this is why the Little Free Library works so well next to the Little Free Pantry, or one inside the other, because it helps to break down that stigma. And if it's shut, then people aren't going to be able to access it.
Okay, so I understand the principle of open access, but Maria, when you started it, didn't that frighten you? Didn't you think, my gosh, you know, someone's going to get something, it's going to make the mill, I'm going to be in trouble, what do I do? Do I need insurance? How did you get over that fear that you might do more harm than good, and you need to monitor it?
Because when you know your community, there's the first thing is really scared and afraid, because you know them really well. For example, one of my community, their first initial thought was that people will use that one as a drug box, and they will demolish it. So when we first started, we just put up the pantry for 2 weeks, didn't put anything in it. But during the 2 weeks, nothing happened, which is really surprised the people. And over the 1 year now, we had 2 vandalism happens, but both of them, we know the guy who has got emotional problem. So he needs to get rid of his emotion, not necessarily to break the pantry away. But during this pandemic again, people may thinking, oh, nobody wants to touch that one because all the coronavirus will be there, anything. However, no, people do more carefully to working together to put things carefully. When you put out something, they just word of mouth to say that you need to wash your hands. That is the best way away from the COVID-19. So pantry is really source of lots of the information boxes as well. So definitely I understand the community will have a really afraid about not trusting each other, but always say to the team, we have to trust the community first. Otherwise, they never be trusted after. That's my first initial thought from it.
Okay, well, obviously it's based upon a sort of trusting philosophy, which is really quite important. So, Jessica, if someone wanted to start a pantry, or they wanted to start a series of them, or if they wanted to put one outside of their house, how would they start it? And what support would they get, and where would they get it from?
From what I have seen, the central problem to solve associated with these is location. So if someone already has a location in mind and the property owner associated with that location is given the go-ahead, from there it's really quite easy. Again, location seems to be kind of the central hurdle that potential stewards need to overcome. I, from what I've seen, tend to think that locations that are privately owned, but in some way publicly operated, work the best. So businesses, nonprofits, churches, schools, places like that, mostly because those places provide some privacy buffer and in a commuter culture, ample parking. These will increase traffic to your area. So to kind of head off any neighbor complaints about either of those things, a more publicly operated space works well. That said, it can also work well in somebody's neighborhood. I just recommend that your neighbors be on board with it prior, because this is all about being a good neighbor. From there, I think rather than trying to follow a model, what works best is just to call on one's existing resources, whether that's in terms of human resources or marketing resources, whatever it is that a person has access to, and kind of marshaling that to the cause. I think when someone tries to step out too far outside of what is their norm, it doesn't tend to go as well. We want this, it's a small space for one thing. It should be a relatively easy to implement and even a project that folks find joy in. If we're trying to make this into a nonprofit where you need staff and all of that kind of thing, it just does not work very well. So I think, work with your friends, work with your work colleagues, your church, people that you know, and then do what you do well.
You do it that way, and that's interesting to know, and the sort of support you can get. But Lara, I guess the first step is putting your toe in the water for the first time. I mean, how did you do that? And then once you got it going, did that make it easier to replicate once people knew what it was?
I think when I was first sort of looking into it, I contacted Jessica, and basically more or less said to me, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. And it's something that I've said, I'm sure I said that to you, Maria, we can just leave the box there and, put a few things into it and expect our community to kind of, I suppose, by osmosis, work out how it works. I mean, what I took it on a little bit further, because there wasn't any Little Free Pantries in the UK when I started, so nobody knew anything about it. So I launched a Facebook page, and I told members of my local community about it, and then I had to just try and spread the word like that, really, just to start with. And within a month, I'd actually had an inquiry from someone else, literally a mile away from me, who wanted to set up their own Little Free Pantry. And it's worked fantastically, because now, because of the momentum that it's taken over here, we have access to very small amounts of funding, so that we can either raise money for a new pantry, or if we know that we're going to get a big need during the holidays, because we have something called holiday hunger here quite often, which is where the children are at home that would normally be free school meals, and they're having to fund those extra meals. I mean, thankfully Marcus Rashford has been on board with that and tried to get the free school meals vouchers, but that's only going to be for so long. So then we raise money. And so it can be as simple as you like, or as complex as you like.
Okay, but I also guess, I mean, listening to you talking, is you've established a network of self-help, haven't you, to help each other. So, Maria, you're beginning to help Melanie in Enfield now, aren't you, who's wanting to start one here? I mean, how did she get in touch with you, and what sort of help can you give her in a network sort of way?
Because from Lara's point, she started from very small, from her local area, by using her idea to move it into the more different agency working together, which is different approach to that one. So when I met with the Enfield, different communities there and different agencies, you need one mindset. Why do you need that one? And how you can do it? Because when you're working with multi-agencies, they got different aims on it. But Little Free Pantry, you have to make a blend it down to the one project. So for example, what I learned from the one project, what I did, I just asking them to sitting down together and think about what is the best to represent of like a symbol of this Little Free Pantry. So we made one different kind of the symbol of it, and then they found it as a butterfly because they want to see the community change from transforming from the one object to the others. So we made this one, which is some butterfly together. So this is represent of the Little Free Pantry, as well as for the whole different agency working together for the community through the Little Free Pantry. So you need a one object to one mindset.
But in the case of sort of Enfield, was it a case of them learning about it from you, getting in touch with you, or what happened?
Again, there's a really first stage at this point. So the various location they got really worried about where to put it. And again, about they're afraid if they damage, who will be responsible from it as well. But again, you don't have to worry about too much. I mentioned to my team, you need to be ready to make the pantry, maybe 10 of them. That's we need to be ready for it. If it's any breakdown, don't worry, just do it. And about the main issue about storage, who took storage for that one, who took care for that one, but you need agreement between the different agencies together. Lara, you've got something to say, aren't you?
Okay, Lara.
Well, there's a big coincidence, and there's something, someone in the middle of Maria and myself, and that is actually Melanie Smith at the Enfield project. Melanie was actually one of she was actually one of the pastors at the local United Reformed Church here when I actually first started the Little Free Pantry here. And we were actually we've known each other for quite some time, and we actually were at a community microfunding event together. She was actually putting in a bid for the microfunding for a charity that she was on the committee for, and I was actually pitching for the Little Free Pantry. So we actually already knew each other, and it was something that she was interested in, you know, right from the outset. She'd actually seen the whole thing start, and we'd worked together sharing food when Melanie was actually at the church over this way. So it was something that she was already aware of. Okay,
I mean, I gather she was aware of it, and I know that she, you know, really was thankful for the help all of you gave. Jessica, I mean, if you know, someone wanted to find out more about it, is there a central sort of point about free pantries, or do you just learn through the network? Is there any information, website, package of information that people can go to?
So I was listening to the response before her last response about people finding out about these projects, which I believe was a question that you asked me and I did not answer. I actually just created some content for the website that I operate, littlefreepantry.org, about how will people find out about this project. And I believe the first question is, if you do nothing, people will find out about it. You may have to wait a little longer, but people will find it. I think the little boxes have been, in most places at this point, kind of the concept of the Little Free sharing space has been primed enough by the Little Free Library that people just kind of, once they see it, they'll know what to do with it. There are a few other resources there. I recommend that folks create some sort of a dedicated social media presence like Lara did. It's been really helpful for me, and I know other stewards, but also that is not necessary. So if social media is not a language that you speak, and if you have no desire to learn it, is absolutely not necessary. I mean, you can put the box out there and people will find it. Again, I create regular content related to kind of the, I guess, the stewardship, impact, all of those kinds of things of the mini pantry movement. And I include all of that on my webpage, littlefreepantry.org. I am not the only person who has a web presence related to the mini pantry concept. There are lots of other stewards. If you Google Little Free Pantry, I may be one of the first that comes up. But again, there are others. There's a large network out of Seattle. Their page, I believe, is the Little Free Pantry, Pantries.org. She does a great job with that website, and I know of multiple others. So a Google search should get you there. And actually on one of the things that I was doing before I got on this call, I maintain a map of Little Free Pantries. And so if you just want to take a look at really the movement as it's concentrated in the United States and growing in other countries, that's a good place to go. Really, the purpose of the map is not to show how much the movement has grown, but people use that resource every day to connect with pantries where they live. So if anyone who is viewing this webinar happens to decide to take the next step and steward a Little Free Pantry, I invite you to come onto the website, find the map, and then all you do is click Add Pantry, and then you can add your own project there, and it'll be added alongside thousands of others at this point, and people in need will find your project through that map. So there are a number of resources available. A Google should get you there.
Okay, all right, and it's really interesting that you're doing social mapping. I mean, that's a great thing to do. Well, we've sort of come to the end of our 30 minutes, so I'll ask you each just to say a sentence. If somebody wanted to start a Little Free Pantry, Maria, what sort of encouragement would you give them?
I refer the phrase from Anne Frank. She said, "No one has ever become poor by giving." That's my first initial thought. Yes, we need to give, but how? That's really main point. So Little Free Pantry, when you talk about it, people doesn't understand. But when you show them the box, the pantry, and they got really click quite easily. So don't be afraid, just to do so. And as Jessica said, and Lara got the website as well, the website give you really step by step what to do. Just attach with us.
And Laura, what briefly would you give as your word of advice?
My word of advice, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. I always say to people, without the kindness of others, I'm just a woman with an empty cupboard.
Okay, and Jessica, all the way across there from the States in the middle of the day, what advice would you give?
I think that it's good to think about the kind of community you want to live in and to start taking steps to create the types of places we want to live in. Trusting, compassionate, generous action is the only thing that is going to get us to that kind of community. And if you're gonna fail in the pursuit of that kind of a community, it's worth it.
Okay, I mean, that's a good message. I mean, you know, often failure leads to success anyhow. You should never be afraid to fail. And I think that's important. Anyhow, thank you all for taking part today. I think people will find it very interesting. We've had a lot of interest in it. So I suspect here locally, you know, there will be a lot more interest as a result of this webinar today. So thank you all for giving up your time, telling us about your experience and telling us about something that's very exciting. And in a time of crisis like COVID, poverty, climate change, these things are going to be increasingly important. So thank you all. And we'll end this interview now.